Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Mindful Marathon Conversations. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Quirk. I'm a pediatrician and a run coach, and the founder of Mindful Marathon, where I help make running easy and fun for busy professionals. And today I have a very special guest with me. I'd like to introduce Dr. Phil Pierorazio. He is professor and chief of urology at Penn Presbyterian Medical Center here in Philadelphia. He is a urologic oncologist and a strong believer in physician and surgeon wellness. And he's the creator of the Operate with Zen podcast, which is an amazing podcast you should all go download after this is over. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Phil.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. And geez, that was a mouthful. I appreciate you saying all those wonderfully nice things about me and giving the plug for Operate with Zen. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, they're all true. And I'm very happy to get to know you over the last year or so.
Likewise.
So maybe just start off by telling us, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into this mindfulness journey to start with.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from New York. I recently relocated to the Philadelphia area. I was in Baltimore for about 15 years at a wonderful place called Johns Hopkins. And now I'm at the University of Pennsylvania. And like many surgeons, surgery can be challenging physically and mentally. And a few years ago, I started changing kind of my workout and fitness routines. Instead of having necessarily fitness goals, meaning lifting more weights, running faster, it changed to just feeling better in the operating room and feeling well every day. And that helped. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and I had just recovered kind of from a burnout episode and things were rough for all of us. And all of a sudden had a whole bunch of free time and said, all right, what can I do to make myself better with this free time? And one of the things simply I realized is I needed to be more flexible. And I thought that was something that could help. So I started getting into or revisiting yoga strictly for flexibility. And just being kind of curious and interested in things, I started reading about yoga and getting into mindfulness. And to make a long story short, it changed my life, particularly over the last 3 years. First of all, it gave me kind of a routine and foundation of physical well-being and mental well-being, but it also affirmed a lot of the really good things I was doing in my life over the last 10, 20 years that I didn't realize were really mindful or wellness practices. So I learned some new stuff and I learned to affirm the good things I was doing. So that was really the take home for me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that it reaffirmed what you were already doing, because I think when I started running, I didn't know that that was maybe a mindfulness practice for me. And I don't know that at that time in my life, we weren't really talking a lot about burnout. I feel like we're talking about it a lot more in the physician community now, but like 10 years ago, I didn't even really have that word to describe how I felt, but that's kind of how I started running at the time.
And I think you're spot on, right? I say I recovered from a tough burnout episode a few years ago. And I think in retrospect is because I had a name. I knew what it was and I could name it. That's why I called it burnout and a burnout episode. But in retrospect, I'd been cycling in and out of burnout through my training, right? For well over a decade and just didn't know what it was and didn't know what to call it, but was finally experienced and educated enough to know that feeling.
Yeah. Have you always been, an exerciser, like someone who has been drawn to physical activity? I know you dabbled in running in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah. So I played baseball in college. And so I was pretty athletic and loved sports growing up, played 3 seasons of sports and multiple sports over the summer every year for as long as I can remember. So I've always been very physically active and inclined. Once I was done with college baseball, I wanted nothing to do with kind of team sports. I was a little burnt out, I guess, to use that term again, just from a exhausting experience with baseball. So when I was in med school, I got into running. And so a buddy of mine who played baseball together, and we were both in New York City at that time, joined New York Roadrunners. We really got into running. It was a great way to stay in on the weekend and, have one less night of, being out, and kept us focused and fit for at least, one evening and one day. And it allowed us to run the New York City Marathon 2 years in a row, which was awesome. And then I got tired of running. And so I got back into basketball, is one of my other loves. And so I've been basically playing basketball, working out, doing that. I don't actively run distance anymore, but I'll still run every now and then. But now physical activity is a part of my routine. It's part of who I am, and it helps me feel well, as a surgeon, as a dad, as a husband, just in general.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about your routine? I know you've talked about it. I've heard you talk about it on your podcast, but I think it would be helpful for people because, I know you're a very busy person. You have a high stress, what I would consider a very high stress job. And you have a family and you're still fitting in all of these things. So how do you kind of structure your day?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's something that's really important. And just like to start by saying, it's one of the first things we give up as physicians and surgeons and busy professionals, whether or not you're in medicine, is we go, oh man, my day is short on time. Let me cut out the physical, well-being. Maybe I can just eat something quick. Maybe I'll cut out the workout I want to do. And with a little bit of experience and time, you realize that that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And by making that investment in your physical health and well-being, it creates more discretional energy for you at the end of the day. It keeps you more focused when you're at work and doing the other, kind of tasks you need to do throughout your day. So I try and teach our trainees now and stress to them, don't neglect your health. That is the foundation of everything else you do. It will make you a better learner. It will make you a better physician. It will make you a better, husband, wife, whatever your other roles may be, by protecting your health and your well-being first. So my routine starts first thing in the morning. And the first thing I do is I get up in the morning and I drink a huge glass of water, because I'm starting to get to the age where I can't keep myself. If I hydrate before bed, I'll be up all night long. So I hydrate first thing in the morning, and then I go do yoga. And most days it is 20 minutes. It's not long. Some days I know if I have a slower morning or a later start, I'll do 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but I do yoga every single day, and followed by 10 minutes of mindfulness, just kind of sitting quiet. Most of the time it's a guided meditation, but that's the way I start my day. And that does a number of things. First of all, it sets the tone for the day that it's about wellness and well-being. I have not checked my cell phone. I don't look at work. I don't listen to the news. It starts off with wellness and well-being. Once again, as I'm getting older, it also helps my body wake up, and it helps my mind wake up. And just kind of getting my back and my hips and my legs loose helps prepare for the day. And then the mindfulness aspect of it, I think there's a lot of benefits of mindfulness, and we can talk about it for hours on end, but it's a great way to kind of start the day and wake up your mind as well as your body. And then in terms of rest of the routine, at least 2 days a week, I play basketball, typically for a couple of hours. Right now, my routine is a 2-hour pickup game and then a league game for an hour. I try and do one longer yoga class in a studio if I can, with an instructor, to kind of help me get better and have somebody else's eyes, and just to mix it up a little bit. I do typically some form of high intensity interval training workout. If anybody has Peloton, I love the tread or bike boot camps. Great way to get a really intense workout with strength training, in addition to cardio, in a relatively short period of time, usually once a week. And then honestly, I've also learned to build in rest days. So I do yoga every day, but there are some days where it's lighter yoga. It's a lot of what, kind of slow flow, or just kind of holding poses and really working on stretching. Sometimes I don't get off the floor, and I'll give my body days to rest. Yeah. Otherwise I get hurt, and it's not so much fun.
No. I've incorporated yoga actually on most of my running rest days. So I tend to run like 4 times a week, and I'll try to do a cycling workout maybe once or twice. And then, on my off days, rest days, I'll do like a slow flow or something. But I find that that's been really helpful just to keep up with consistency. So there's some movement and some intentionality about having exercise every day, but it doesn't always mean that you have to like go hard and crush it every day,
Yeah, I think
especially
that's
as
a
we get
huge.
older.
No, and it's funny. And I've learned too, I've been in a variety of pickup basketball games, and I know twice a week is my sweet spot. If I pay 3 times a week, I get hurt.
Mhm.
And pretty quickly. It'll take a few weeks and I'll have some kind of nagging, annoying injury. And if I play once a week, I'm just not as happy. So I try, that's my sweet spot right now. And I'm sure at some point it'll transition to one day a week of, kind of less intensity on my hips and knees. But right now I'm having fun.
When you started with all of this, did you, I know that, like now it's been, probably some years you've had this routine, but a lot of people, I think when they think about running, they get turned off really quickly, like, oh, it's going to hurt, it's going to take up too much time, all of these things. And I try to say, start low, go slow. You don't have to do an hour, you don't have to do an hour of activity. When you first started, how many minutes were you
Oh
doing? Like,
yeah.
how did you kind of work up?
Oh, that's an incredible point, Michelle. When I started, it was 5 minutes of yoga,
Yeah,
and now I'm at 20. Right. I
right,
mean, I'll do hour-long classes. I'll do it, but not every day. Nobody
right.
could. I mean, honestly, unless that's your life, I
Yeah,
don't think any of us could do that every day, and it's not sustainable, and it's not a goal that's reasonable.
yeah,
And most of us can see the benefits. I mean, the science is there to say you'll see the benefits of cardiovascular exercise within 20 to 30 minutes of doing it on a daily basis, or even a few times a week. And there
yeah.
was just a recent JAMA paper. I don't know if you saw this one.
Nope.
I forget the title, but it had Weekend Warrior in the title.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this is a good one for you and your audience.
Yes.
A good buddy of mine turned me on to it, but it basically said you can. It doesn't matter so much how you get your kind of cardiovascular exercise in, whether it's stretched out during the week or if you're just a weekend warrior. As long as you're getting it in, you'll get the benefits. And so
Mhm.
small chunks of time are a great way to do it, especially in a busy schedule and a busy life. And um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the Peloton. We have the bike, but the app is great. So if you only have 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you can filter it by length of the workout, which is really nice for very busy people. So you can fit it in, even if it's a meditation or a quick stretch, but it counts.
I agree completely. I prescribe to that, the theory of kind of compounding interest. It's in Atomic Habits, James
Yep.
Clear's book, which is say a must read for any professional who's thinking about making these small adjustments.
Mhm.
But if you do something every day, you just keep that interest building. If you do nothing, you go backwards. So
Yeah.
like you said, even if it's 5 minutes of a stretch, it's something that keeps you and says, I'm into my physical and mental well-being today, even for 5 minutes, and tomorrow I'll get back to 10 or
Yeah.
20 or whatever it may be.
It just keeps us moving in the right direction, the
Yeah.
forward direction.
Forward direction. Yes.
Yeah. I was thinking about you. You work with a lot of trainees and residents and fellows, I imagine, and I do as well. I think back to when I was a resident, and I don't really think I was exercising at all. I mean, maybe some walking. I know I was trying to run at that time, but it was sort of a mess, and a lot of it is a blur. Um, and I think I know this. It's very hard to think back to that time and then kind of take myself out of that and talk to trainees now. So if you had advice for the residents and the fellows and the trainees out there in terms of their physical activity and wellness, maybe just some advice on how to create
Yeah.
that time and create boundaries.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate you saying that. It was kind of a blur for me too. And it's good to hear somebody else saying that, right? It's just training can be really challenging on us. I do remember being physically active. I don't really remember my routines if there was one. I think it was more kind of ad hoc when I knew I had some time, or maybe on the weekends when I wasn't on call, I knew I could get a run or a workout in, or trying to get some dumbbells in the house. I honestly don't really remember,
Same.
but I talk to my trainees about it all the time now. And the reason I do is to set the tone that we should be talking about this, and it should be an important part of our conversation, just as important as the patient we're going to take care of, or the surgery we're going to do, or whatever it may be. So, did you work out yesterday? What did you do? What's your plans for this week? Here's what I did. Do you want to come to yoga with me? all of these kinds of things, just to normalize this conversation that this should be a part of our culture and it should be a part of how we take care of each other.
Yeah.
And so the specific advice I give them is, first of all, I say, listen, there are some days and some weeks you're just going to be in survival mode, and that is okay too. So that's okay. Recognize that when you're in survival mode, just survive, just get through the week, get through the day. But when you have the time, you have the perspective, really carve out and think about what you're spending your time doing, and does that align with your values and with well-being? Because listen, if we think about it, and the time we waste, right? Listen, Netflix is awesome and there's some great shows out there, right? But if you think about the half hour or 45 minutes that you spend at night before you go to bed watching Netflix, and maybe shift that half hour or 40 minutes to even a walk around the block, right? Doing something physical before you sit down for dinner, you're going to see over the matter of weeks to months a tremendous change in who you are and how you function, how you sleep, And so that's the advice I give, is think about the time you waste, or what you invest your time in at the end of the day. And if it's
Yeah.
not in what you want to be, then shift that investment forward into something you want to do when you have time and energy.
Oh, I love that. Shift the investment. Yeah. I mean, lots of time Netflix, and also like scrolling on social media, I imagine.
Huge thing. I mean, my wife and I joke about this all of the time. I mean, you got to get time away from your phone. You really do. And there's very little of importance that impacts your life that goes on social media.
Yep. The do not disturb function is lovely.
Yeah. And guess what? You can catch up with it when you have some time, in between patients, in between cases. You're going to be waiting in line for something, whether it's the supermarket or the bank or whatever it is. Check up on your social media there.
Yeah.
Right. But don't let it keep you up at night. Don't let it keep you from good, healthy habits.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this is great. I do think a shift has happened. I mean, maybe I'm just getting old, but I think a shift has happened because I hear the medical students especially talking a lot about exercise and just a lot of creative things that they do outside of the office, which I always love listening to them, just being a fly on the wall and listening to what else they do, because I feel like at that time I didn't have a lot of other interests, or I should say I had them and then they just went away, poof. And now I've spent the last, I don't know how many years kind of reimagining and getting into some creative space that was lost for a long time.
Yeah, and that's the other benefits of physical activity too. I mean, you mentioned before about running as a mindfulness activity, and just take a quick second to say there are lots of ways to meditate or be mindful, and we often associate it with kind of passive mindfulness, which is sitting down, legs crossed, arms in your lap, closing your eyes, focus on your breath. But there are so many forms of active meditation that work for people. Running is definitely one of them. Hiking, climbing, there's so many physical, weightlifting, all of these things can be mindful activities because it's all about being in the moment and being present. And I remember, in retrospect now, practicing mindfulness every day, my first really truly mindful experiences were flow state experiences in sports.
Mm-hmm.
And then I truly remember when I was marathon training, and my buddy Paul and I would run for, we'd do our long run. So we might be out in Central Park for 2 or 3 hours. And both of us, all of a sudden, somewhere around 45, 50 minutes, an hour, all of a sudden, we're just not talking so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just kind of in the zone, enjoying the space, enjoying what we're seeing around, noticing everybody around us, noticing the trees, Central Park, the city, all of it. And that was a truly mindful experience, really being present in the moment and enjoying that moment together. So yeah, there are lots of ways to be mindful while you're working out. And where I was going with that was some of the other benefits of physical activity: creativity, memory, thought process. All of those things can be worked on while you're doing physical activity. And I stress this for surgeons, but it's true for any high stress position, any physician who's dealing with stressful situations, is that when we're stressed or when we're in a stress stressful situation, our breathing rate rises, our heart rate rises. That's just our natural response. And we can simulate that on a regular basis through physical activity.
Yeah.
So especially cardiovascular activity gets your heart rate up, gets your breathing rate up. And if you learn how to control your heart rate and your breathing rate when you're running or doing whatever physical activity you enjoy, you can also do it in stressful situations. And it's great practice, I think, for any physician who's involved in regularly stressful situations, which is basically all of us.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah, if you're in the OR a lot or in emergency settings.
Yeah.
It happens in our office too.
Yeah, it happens all. I mean, listen,
Yeah,
life is
everywhere.
stressful and everybody, listen, it's just all different degree, we all experience stress and
Yeah,
it's just a different degree of it.
yeah. I would say I had a similar experience, marathon training. I think that was probably the first time I got into kind of a flow experience, like on those long runs and having like a relationship with the trail and the birds and the ducks and all of the things I was seeing. And like time sort of stopped. Like I knew I was out there, but I didn't really know how long I had been going for and I didn't care how long I had left. Like that's a nice feeling. And doesn't often happen, on the day to day, but in those longer runs, that was something really nice about marathon training.
Yeah, it certainly is. And just getting out and experiencing nature is another, even if you don't want to run or do something necessarily strange, just getting outside and experiencing nature is just such a good way to unplug and be present and enjoy all the stimuli around you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your podcast. I plugged it at the beginning, but
Yeah. Yeah. So Operate with Zen started over a year ago now, and you are one of our recent guests. And it started basically, I started it as I needed somewhere to put down my thoughts. And I said, it's 2022. This isn't really a PowerPoint presentation. This isn't really a lecture. How do I start putting my thoughts down? And so I started recording a podcast about some of the concepts I was working through and reading about and trying to understand. And it really made me process what I was doing. And as part of that first season, I also did some interviews with some friends and colleagues who had some unique experiences in mindfulness and surgery. And then I realized once I launched it that people want to hear conversations and not just me droning on. So, so it's morphed into a lot more conversations with people in medicine, people outside of medicine, surgeons. That ends up being a lot of urologists. I think for two reasons. First of all, I know a lot of urologists just by my practice, but as a surgical field, there are a lot of mindful people in urology that are open and talking about it. And if they're out there in other surgical fields and specialties, I'd love to talk to them about it, but I just haven't run across too many yet. But the field is growing, and so it really came as an opportunity to talk about mindfulness and expand the conversation in surgery. And it's meant for anyone and everyone who is in a stressful position and physicians all over the place. But I called it Operate with Zen and made it specifically for surgeons because it felt like surgeons needed a little bit of love. There are, medicine. I remember being in medical school where the family medicine practices and internal medicine were talking about mindfulness and holistic approaches, especially in pediatrics. But it was not happening in surgery, and it's still not happening in surgery. So I thought we needed a little bit of love as surgeons. So I kind of tried to carve out that space a little bit, but hope it's widely applicable to many people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it certainly resonates with me. And I really like hearing about, the surgical experience because I feel very far removed from that now. And my only memories of it are from when I was a medical student, and they're not necessarily positive.
Yeah. No, and I think that's part of it too. We still have negative experiences in the OR, and I don't want anyone to ever leave my operating room with a negative experience.
Yeah.
From the patient to the nurses to the medical students, the anesthesiologist, this should be a positive experience. We're doing great things for people, and it should be a positive experience for everybody involved. And I think we're evolving as a field and recognizing that that's the right way to be, but you still see, remnants of the old. And so, it's hopefully a little bit of culture change too.
Yeah, I think so. But thank you for, being a part of the movement.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, it's so much. I think that's been the most fun is, this is partly how you and I met. is through kind of this movement of trying to make medicine better.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal field, and what we do is so amazing, and the privilege we have to work with people and when they're their most vulnerable and help them through some really tough times. But there's a lot of crap that comes with our field too. And trying to distill out that crap, but push forward all the good things is, I think, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, Operate with Zen is basically on every outlet, Apple, Spotify. You can find it at Buzzsprout. It has its own webpage there. So there's also an Operate with Zen YouTube channel. So lots of opportunities to listen. And I'll also just make the quick plug that, not every episode is going to be interesting to everybody, but we try and keep it really diverse. So there's really practical episodes where we talk to people about time management, how to manage your email, how to manage your vacations. And then there's the more kind of abstract of, how do you deal with complications? How do you, deal with tough interactions with patients? And so hopefully some episode will resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, multiple ones. And are you on social media at all?
Yeah, I'm on social media. Dr. Phil _urology on Twitter is really where you'll find all of this interesting stuff. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, but it's mostly my wife and kids because they're much better looking than I am. So there's an Operate with Zen Twitter account too, but it basically just lists the episodes in case you're on that outlet.
Well, I'll leave the links below. I didn't know you had the YouTube channel, so that's an easy one to click over from here. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge and sharing part of this movement with us.
Well, thanks, Michelle. Thanks for talking with me. It's so much fun to talk with you and share this message. And, if this only helps one person, then we've made the world a better place, but I know it's going to help a lot more than that by what you're doing. So.
Oh, agreed. And you too. Well, thanks again. All right. And thanks everybody for listening. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you liked it, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And if you are a newer runner or a runner who hasn't run in a while and you're looking to get back into the sport, you can find out how to work with me over on my website, which is mindful-marathon.com. See you on the next episode.